You're listening to Nakedly Examined Music, a podcast about songs and songwriters. My name is Mark Linsenmeyer. My guest for episode 227 is Django Haskins, a North Carolina singer, songwriter, and guitarist who has, since 2004, fronted a band called The Old Ceremony. You're right now hearing the song Beautiful from his first solo album, Folding Stars, from way back in 1996. Today we're going to talk about Too Big to Fail from The Old Ceremony's new album, Earthbound. Then look back to their 2009 album, Walk on Thin Air, to talk about the song The Disappear. Then look back to the second album by The Old Ceremony, Our One Mistake, 2006. The song is called Reservations. We'll conclude by listening to another song from the new album, Hangman's Party. For more information, please see theoldceremony.com. For more about this podcast, please see nakedlyexaminedmusic.com and support the effort at patreon.com/nakedlyexaminedmusic. So I've played a little bit of Beautiful from your first solo album, 1996's Folding Stars. We want to get pretty quickly to the new stuff. Do you want to give us just a little picture of starting out then, getting to now, at some point, 2004? When did The Old Ceremony become to existence?
The Old Ceremony started in 2004. So yeah, Folding Stars was my first professional album. I had moved to New York City I had lived in China for a year before that. And, was just kind of getting started, trying to do it full time. And so that sound you heard was my first record. So yeah, I haven't played that song in a long time, but actually I might dig it up someday and play it again. Who knows?
All right. So, I saw that you were in some sort of supergroup that I have not heard any recordings of, but then started The Old Ceremony as a mini orchestra. Can you say a little more about?
Yeah, so I had a band called International Orange, which we did put out a record, but it was at this kind of strange time where things weren't getting online necessarily. And then we stopped playing together before everything was put online. So it just kind of fell between the digital cracks. Mm-hmm. But it is out there. I think there's a bunch of it on YouTube. But yeah, I formed The Old Ceremony in 2004. I just had a lot of songs that were not standard kind of rock outfit material. And I wanted to explore different sounds and kind of a more ambitious palette. And so, without any mind as to, the practicality of doing something like this, I put together this kind of come one, come all orchestral band. We had cello and 2 violins, saxophone and trumpet, accordion, guitar, bass, drums, organ, vibraphone, everything you can imagine, basically. And we were doing these residencies at this local bar, essentially, that didn't really have music very much. And we just kind of turned it into our home for, 6 months or a year or something. And that's really how the band became a going concern. And then from then we kind of pared it down to a 7-piece. We still had the cello and violin and vibraphone, but we, had pared it down to a 7-piece so that we could tour, and we did a lot of touring that way.
All right. Well, tell us where you're at with this new Earthbound record. We're about to hear Too Big to Fail from that. It sounds like maybe you have a few fewer pieces at this point.
It's been a 5-piece for the last 15 years.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been pretty stable. In fact, we still have the violin, vibraphone, organ, guitar, bass, drums. So Earthbound is the record that just came out, and yeah, Too Big to Fail is, it's kind of a little bit more of a rock number. Mm-hmm. So more familiar to Earthlings who like rock. But yeah, the band's been together for 20 years now, and we have made, 7 studio albums, and each one has a lot of different sounds. So if you listen to one track and you listen to another track, it's not the Joshua Tree. It's not going to be just a sound and it's that for the whole record. It's much more like kind of the White Album. So one sounds like a folk song, and then this one sounds like something, from CBGB's in 1979, and then this one is going to sound like some sort of weird French cafe. Like it or not, that's a function of the way my brain and musical brain work. So there you have it.
All right. So here's Too Big to Fail.
Guess we forgot to get our oil change. Funny how bad luck follows on itself like a season of hurricanes. So I made a bad joke, and you listen to the Pogues review. Started as a weekend, now here we are digging flower beds. I went off the deep end a couple of times, and you painted the furniture red. Oh, when you doubt my words, I hope you can read between the lines all around my eyes. Oh, nothing turned out like you thought it would, and the blame is partly mine. But baby, our love is too big to fail. You have to tell me things a dozen times to keep them in my memory. Though I squint sometimes with glasses on, when my vision's gone, you're what I'll see. Well, I remember quiet days when there was nothing to arrange. Now we wave our arms about, shouting orders out like traders in a stock exchange. I bet it never crossed your mind, back when you were born on Groundhog's Day, that someday you'd be living it. But the funny thing is, there's not a lot that I would change. Oh, when you doubt my words, I hope you can read between the lines all around my eyes. Oh, nothing turned out like you thought it would, and the blame is partly mine. When you doubt my words, I hope you can read between the lines all around my eyes. Oh, nothing turned out like you thought it would, and the blame is partly mine. But baby, our love is too big to fail.
So very nice jangle pop, XTC sort of, very much in my wheelhouse. I guess I was a little surprised that, it starts out so big, but then it sort of doesn't, for the chorus, get any bigger. Like it's almost a little tender, a little. Was this supposed to be the power pop song, or what is this exactly to you?
It's just a song.
Okay.
I love power pop stuff. I mean, I've been involved with this Big Star kind of collective thing for 14 years now, where we play with Jody from Big Star and Mike from REM and guys from Wilco. And we've been doing Big Star music all over the world for over a decade. And so obviously I love that stuff. But yeah, no, I'm a minimalist at heart. I don't like piling things on top of piles. I really appreciate, as a listener, having space and using negative space, even in the context of a rock song. So I think that's, where it's coming from. It's really just meant to be the sound of a band as opposed to a bedroom creation.
Sure. So you play violin as well, I understand?
I did, but yes. Or no, we have a violinist. Gabe Pelly is his name.
Yeah, I knew you had one in the live band, but I wasn't sure if, because you play violin, if that was... Well, he's not on this song at all, right?
He's on it. He also plays guitar. So he plays guitar and violin. Yeah, no, I don't play violin in the band. I play saxophone. I play tenor in the band now, and guitar. But yeah.
Any thought about this whole album? Had you worked these things up live with the guys first? Is this purely a studio creation and then you reproduce it live? What is the typical order of operations, and what happened on this one?
We always start live because we're really a live band. I mean, everybody has somewhat of a jazz background, so improvisation and being open to doing things in the moment is really important to us as a band. So we've always played live a lot, and that's how songs kind of get tested. During the pandemic, I wrote a song a week for for 2 years. And so came out with 115 new songs. And so we kind of tore through a whole bunch of those in rehearsals, about 40 of them, I would say, and picked the ones that really were gelling. And so that's where these came from. But in the meantime, we were playing shows and trying each of them out to see how they worked. The arrangements would kind of happen along the way. As we were playing them live, we would adjust the arrangements. And then in the studio, of course, we'd rethink it sometimes. But for the most part, that's how it works.
So specifically, like on the intro to this song, where you've got your little riff, yet the organ does something, it goes up instead of down the second time. And you just, is that just, you're playing through it with them and letting them do whatever they want?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes there are specific things that I really want to happen.
Clearly that riff itself, I mean, it's the melody of the song, so yeah.
The riff is in the song, yeah. I mean, when I play it solo acoustic, it's all in there. But in terms of what each person is playing, yeah, about 13 years ago, I stopped telling anybody what to play unless there was something really specific that I wanted them to try. Because if you want to have a band, you need to have a band. It's not hired guns. We're a band and we've been together a long time, so they have to have some autonomy. I'm writing all those songs and bringing them in, so that's their area that they can be, creative in, and they're all great musicians, so I have total faith in what they come up with. And if it doesn't work, we just talk about it and try something else.
Sure. What about the tones? So those two electric guitars over, so you're acoustic and then you've got the two electric guys. Is that what's happening in this one?
I played electric on the original track.
Okay.
Gabe also played electric with the kind of delay guitar. And then I went back and did an acoustic.
What about when you're live? Are you just doing this as a two guitar thing, or do you feel...
Two electrics. I don't play acoustic with the band. I play a lot of solo shows and play a lot of these songs, and I arrange it on an acoustic. But yeah, with the band, kind of stick with rock and roll.
Is that just because I've kind of gone back and forth on this myself? Am I going to play rhythm acoustic, or am I going to just, that maybe is something that doesn't amplify typically as well? Or it's nice to have the layers available.
It is. I love the texture of an acoustic guitar. If I could have another person playing acoustic guitar through the whole thing, that would be great. If there is some sort of lead guitar part, it tends to be me playing it. So playing acoustic only works in certain situations anyway. But yeah, I memean, it's more of a practical thing, honestly.
Sure.
I've got enough going on singing and playing, and then also playing saxophone. I don't also need to have an acoustic setup. It's just too much sometimes. But also, yeah, I mean, a lot of the kind of melodic guitar stuff is stuff that I'm playing, so needed on electric.
Sure. I guess it's also a matter of how, I mean, especially I'm thinking of how many instruments you had at the beginning and the money available. Tom Petty decided at some point, I want my bass player to switch to acoustic because I want that strumma thing, and I'll get somebody else. I'll get an extra member just to have somebody strumming and doing background vocals through the whole thing. But that's a luxury that bands...
REM had our friend Peter Holsapple played acoustic with them a lot. They always would hire different people to do those extra layers that you have in the studio, but you don't have in live unless you've got that kind of extra bandwidth.
Oh, when you tell my words, I hope you can read between the lines all around my eyes.
So just moving to that very harmonized pre-chorus area, any thoughts about how you're balancing the various instruments, how you're making sure the low sludgy guitar isn't filling too much space, what the electric piano is doing, even just how many vocals? It's 3-part harmony, I assume, or
it is 3-part, yeah.
And are you usually just doing those yourself? Are you, because you've done it live, everybody's going to do their part?
Yeah, on the record, often I'll double what the other guys are doing on harmonies, but yeah, the guys are doing their harmonies. So to that point about getting out the low guitar out of the way, I had been playing, kind of low open position kind of stuff. And on that section, I only play a 2-note thing way up high, 10th fret on the high 2 strings, as does Gabe, the other guitar player. So everything gets high and sparkly and the bottom kind of drops out. And so that's the idea, is that section kind of floats in that way. The other thing about it is the verse melody kind of does a lot of ups and downs. This one is a very static kind of melody with a lot of words, So it's really about the rhythm of it. Da 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 da. So it's kind of an experiment in writing a section where the melody isn't really moving around, but it's driven by the lyrics themselves and the rhythm of the lyrics. And so we really wanted to bring that out. And so had everybody singing it was another way to really emphasize that. Later on in the song, we drop everything out except for the vocals, basically, for one time around of that. That's a real key part of the song.
Yeah, so this goes to what, over 4.5 minutes with no appreciable like jam section, right? There's just enough words.
It's a lot of words in this song. Yeah.
Yeah, so sort of retrospective about a relationship. Any thoughts about the lyrics come last? Are these sitting in a drawer? Are there many more lyrics than ever make it to songs? What is the...
No, so they happen at the time of writing the song. I never write lyrics by themselves. It's a song about marriage, and it could be about a marriage, literally, or a band. I was writing it about a marriage, but in retrospect, it could just as easily be about our band. It's just about commitment and what that kind of looks like long term. So I had a lot to say, because it's not a "You're Gone, I Miss You" song. It's not a "You're Gone, Fuck You" song. It's not a "I Love You, Things Are Great" song. It's a song with a lot of nuances in terms of what it's trying to get at. So it's a little bit of a narrative, even kind of chronological.
Of course, there are ups and downs in any marriage and whole periods where you're like, maybe this wasn't a great idea, but it just seems, I know when my wife got into it in the first place, she just had this, you don't fail at this thing, so
you're doing it.
You're right. It is a matter of willing it on a constant basis. And that seems like the line, nothing turned out like you thought it would, and the blame is partly mine. Like,
sure.
The fact that there's no next verse, I don't think there's a somehow reinterpreting that. It is faith despite whatever.
That's right. And, actually, interesting, this one actually started with the title. I was writing a song a week, and anytime I would come up with an idea for a song in any form or fashion, I would hold on to it.
Okay.
And I got this idea of Too Big to Fail, and I'm like, what would that be about? And then I kind of worked my way into what it was going to be about and wrote it. But it came with, from the phrase, that obviously well-known phrase, in a different context, right?
Sure. That I'll say I was a little suspicious of that, given that other context. But it's a very heartfelt song, given that seemingly impersonal title. Let me play some of the bridge.
You have to tell me things a dozen times to keep them in my memory.
And you thought you got the fluttering tambourine, you got a bunch of little things.
Open it up, create space.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, contrast and dynamics are a really big part of music, but also of what we do. We really like to play with dynamics. Some bands kind of press play and they're on until the song or show is over, or career. And for us, we really, really care a lot about there being change within songs. And so, we get to this other part, which is much more kind of fewer words, even more direct, if that's possible, and a little bit tender, and so create space, stop the rhythm, let it be open so that when you come back in, you're ready for it.
Sure. Yeah, I guess my initial comment about how, given that it is too big, is right. Actually, I would almost expect, maybe because I have the senses working overtime or something going in my head, that the chorus would be bigger and would have to have a solo section or something because the emotion is bursting so strong. But no, you just kind of sits there, and then we're going to reintroduce the initial riff and then just let it end. And that was plenty. I
think the idea is that it's not an epic. I mean, it's an epic song in terms of length.
Sure.
But it's not the length of the song, but the length of the commitment. But it's not a heroic song. Mm-hmm. It's a life-size song. And so putting in this kind of bombast that, the word big might imply, doesn't fit, because that's not what it's about. It's about human-sized stuff and the kind of nobility of just working it out. And that's not heroic. It just is. So while I love a big chorus, and I grew up on all that same stuff too, it is big chorus, relatively speaking,
sure.
But I'm not looking for it to just, it's not a rave, it's a song that gets to where it needs to go. And then for me, that's how big we wanted it to be. But
let's get the second one out there. The Disappear from Walk on Thin Air 2009. Very different tone to this. You want to say a little about where you're at all so long ago? Yeah,
boy, who knows? This is a kind of a special one because it never really worked live very well, but I love the recording. There was something really special about it. One thing, I had a cold when I recorded the vocal, and I was just going to do a scratch vocal, but it ended up having something that was obviously I couldn't reproduce exactly. but it really worked for the song. This is a whole strain or vein or something else that rhymes with that, I guess, of songs that we have, which is kind of the more noir type stuff.
Sure.
And, kind of cinematic. And this came from, I saw a movie, often it'll come from some sort of very vague association visually. I saw some movie set in Eastern Europe where someone jumped off a building and turned into a angel. Like, I don't remember exactly. I mean, maybe it was Wings of Desire. I don't know what it was. Some depressing kind of semi-communist black and white movie I saw that at the time really stuck with me visually. And I wrote it from the visual of a couple of scenes that had stuck in my mind and just created a different story with that. But I was trying to keep the same kind of feel that I got from the visuals. So often I'll do that. I'll write, kind of take just a little snippet from a film or a book or something, and then use those as the starting point for a different type of story.
All right, here's The Disappear.
Wake up with the sun. Don't tell anyone. Just call the boss from Reno, tell him that you're coming down with something strong. Just turn off your sound. Check into a cheap motel. There's cable and a Bible, and if you want it, ice is down the hall. Tell me how to disappear. Show me how it goes. 'Cause I'm ready to become a stranger in my clothes. Let me make it clear. Show me how to disappear. It happens all the time. Man on the subway line, his outline getting blurry while around him all the faces hurry on. People sprouting wings, abandoned ordinary things, with a sky that looks like pavement, just a rustle and a wave, and then they're gone. Tell me how to disappear. Show me how it goes. 'Cause I'm ready to become a stranger in my clothes. Let me make it clear. Show me how to disappear. When the hard words fly and there's no easy reply, you could try to fill the space up, but you might as well just face up to it now. But this is how to disappear, and this is how it goes. Bit by bit we counterfeit until the case is closed. It's becoming clear. This is how to
Yes, I wrote Leonard Cohen vocal next to that. I thought this might be the
He
closest
also
thing.
had a cold too. Yeah.
And he thought another sort of descending, very melodic. It's not a prog rock thing. This is a foundational riff that could be in any number of songs, but you're going to build something really interesting sonically on top of it.
Yeah, I'm a kid of the Beatles, I grew up on Paul McCartney's Internal Logic and I've ventured beyond that. But of course, like when it comes down to it, I'm not going to argue if something works. I don't think that you get a prize for doing it differently just to do something differently. I think there are twists and turns in it. It does have a minor descending thing. But yeah, it's mostly about the vibe of the song and kind of creating that and holding on to that visual and emotional space that it creates.
Well, and even if that's kind of an iconic, simple downward thing, the fact that you introduce it with this wash of sound, what is that? Do you even recall? Is it a sample?
No. It's Mark Simonson, our keyboardist, has all these kind of old organs and keyboards, and then he puts them through guitar pedals and plays with them live and in the studio. So that was definitely him doing a lot of music concrete kind of stuff. He does that a lot.
And you also add very quickly when the bass, a lot of little offbeat things.
Yeah.
Again, are these kind of written in there from the start, even when you're playing it solo, or this is the kind of thing that develops as you're working the arrangement with the group?
This is definitely a song that was written for the band specifically. I don't have an arrangement of this. I don't play it solo because it really has to have all those parts.
Right. Yeah.
Like these little...
Unless you want to get your kazoo out, you can really approximate that.
Yeah. So, it was everybody bringing their own kind of ideas. The bass does these kind of offbeat things. Matt Brando, our longtime bass player, was great at that stuff because he was, again, a jazz player, but who also played everything else. So he would put these little touches in there. So, yeah, I think that's one reason why I like the song a lot.
When you're arranging stuff, are you writing it, with the ba 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 ba, what the strings are going to do? Yeah, especially working with multiple players. You're still letting pretty much the strings come up with their riffs and then layer on top of that?
So Gabe, plays violin and he does all the strings for the last, 10 years or so, or more, maybe 15 years. But when we had him and Josh, the cellist, which we did on that record, they would have to kind of work out internally. They would kind of like have a little sectional thing where they'd work out their parts and we'd try them together with the band. But no, I'm not writing anything out. I bring it in, I play it for them. We go over certain sections where we need to do something differently, but it's really kind of a collaborative process.
So we haven't really talked about your interaction with drums. When drums come in here, he's not playing any cymbals. It's just very, hi-hat, but it's very minimalist, given how atmospheric the whole thing is. He could be cymbaling all over the place, adding the gong or whatever. What is your drummer philosophy here?
Well, so that was our original drummer who was with Dan Hall, who played with us for 18 years. And he's not on this new record. Our drummer, Nate, is on the new one. But Dan was a very much a jazz guy. He loved Elvin Jones, and he was very cymbal-centric. And he's just an incredibly creative guy. But I often wanted fewer cymbals. And I think this one, we really wanted to have a lot of space. And cymbals take up a lot of space. So I think he, chose to stay off them until the chorus. And I really appreciated that. At some point, I noticed that Tom Waits records, they never hit the cymbals. They just used percussion for what you would normally hit a cymbal for. And I realized that was a big part of why there's so much more space on a lot of those kind of post-Sorphus trombones records. So I'm always kind of chasing that.
Let me play a little bit around the end of the verse going into the second verse here.
And if you wanted ISIS down the hall,
so that transition, I noticed your acoustic guitar does a really fun little thing, which that time it's almost inaudible. You kind of bring it up later. Are these mixing decisions that are made that there's enough going on there. I don't need this thing to stick out, even though it's nice?
Probably. I don't remember that one specifically, but yeah, we're aware that you can only focus on a certain number of things at a time. Otherwise, there's no focus at all. So, you kind of choose what to highlight. I think at that point, we really liked what the bass was doing, going in from the minor to the major, leading into the next section, and the organ. So I think those two were taking precedence over the acoustic.
And within the chorus, so, you've got your first two lines with the da-da-da-da, and then let's hear the third line here.
I'm ready to become a stranger.
Just that you're going to actually let the drums get, double time it,
Yeah.
It was just an interesting choice of change in energy there. Any thoughts about that?
I mean, it's just about just kind of momentum and what felt right. It felt like that should be where it kind of takes off. For a long time, it's kind of walking pace, ba, 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 and then it kind of picks up a little bit, but it's in waves. And then that's the point, I think, at which it, again, going from that visual that I had started with of the person on the concrete block building, jumping and turning into an angel or dying, which same thing, I guess, in the film, of where you would kind of take off. And so we wanted that to really lift and take off. So I think that's where that was coming from. And there's also there's a rising line. I'm playing it on lap steel that goes ba da 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 boo. And so while the bass is going down, so there's this kind of separation happening, making it wider.
And again, these are just things that this sounds like something that you would have architected, not that.
Well, we architected it in the studio. I mean,
sure.
I had the chords descending, and we played it, and we were like, well, we need something going up, and so I did that going up. So yeah, I mean, there's a certain extent to which the studio is part of the process of arranging. Then we have to figure out, okay, well, how do we do this live? Like, because I'm not going to bring a lap steel to every club either. So we have to kind of pick our battles, as it were.
So lyrically, that line that I just ended on, that I'm ready to become a stranger in my clothes, I think that's a great line. It was that. Thanks. That was not from, that was not a quote or anything. Okay.
No.
I mean, the whole idea of disappearing, typically that is, right? You can't actually disappear yourself. Something else disappears to the audience's perspective.
Right.
So the fact that you're starting it out with this, I'm going to disappear myself, but then you do sort of play with that, and that it gets a little more surreal of, this, I was going to ask you about, with this guy that looks like pavement, but okay. So he's jumping off.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I guess any thought in terms of, is this consistently from the point of view of the person who's disappearing, or is that purposely ambiguous, that is presented sort of as, I mean, the noir thing is, even if it's first person, even if it's the detective telling you about it, it's still a presentation that makes that person a character.
It's mostly from that, I think, that character. I mean, I'm not really sticking to a really strict narrative.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, there is this kind of sense that there is this character who is in some sort of desperate situation and wants to disappear. And then there are kind of different ways of disappearing. So I think the last verse is about kind of a disappearing, not physically, but emotionally. And it kind of breaks down where it's just bass and vocals, when the hard words fly. And the chorus changes to, this is how to disappear. This is how it goes. Bit by bit, we counterfeit until the case is closed. And so it's kind of a different and an internal kind of disappearing, where instead of it just being surreal or literally just going somewhere, you're absenting yourself emotionally. And I think, in the end, that's probably what it comes down to. I mean, I think that the reason I put that last is I think that's the one that really probably tells the story that I was trying to tell on some level the whole time.
So I know you have one guy doing double duty with violin and guitar. Are the vibes, is that your keyboardist turning to his right?
Yes, Mark Simonson is and keyboards, yeah. I mean, he doesn't play him on this. He sometimes will play him on the same song, but he'll just switch. He'll just go over. He has a little station, like an L station there.
Okay, I thought there were vibes on this, but maybe it's just a vibey sounding keyboard.
I think there are vibes.
Okay.
In the studio, he'll do everything. Sure. I mean, in the studio, there are layers more than we would do live. But like live, he would play vibes on it and then maybe just switch to organ at some point.
That's an interesting choice to still find it worth bringing on tour. I found that as much as I love vibes and xylophone and chimes and things like that, it's not that hard a synth sound to get a pretty good version of that. But I guess if you're a purist, and it's certainly visually different.
He's a percussionist, he's a drummer and vibes player. So he's an incredible player. And seeing that played live is a unique experience. You don't really see it in the rock context. And so that was always, from the very beginning, a big part of the show, is like, when was the last time you went and saw just a regular band with a full set of vibes? And, as opposed to glockenspiel or a xylophone, vibes have a full set of tubes underneath and a rotating motor that creates the vibrato sound. So it's a whole different experience than you would get from a keyboard.
Is it Milt Jackson? Is that the famous vibe player that I'm thinking?
Oh my gosh, I had it just a second ago and then I've lost it. Yeah, there's a really famous one that I'm missing. But yes, there are a number of great vibes players. Lionel Hampton. Lionel Hampton's the big guy. And Milt Jackson. But yes, Lionel Hampton's the guy.
And have you spent as much time with jazz as your compatriots, or?
I have. I mean, I didn't start out as a jazz player. I mean, I was named after a jazz player and then, kind of purposefully avoided playing jazz or writing jazz because I was, I didn't really want to be that on the nose. But I do write jazz tunes sometimes. And I've always loved jazz. And in the process of the last 20 years with this band, that's one thing that we really bond over. And then I picked up tenor saxophone just a couple of years ago. And now I'm working transcribing tenor solos. I'm trying Hank Mobley and Charlie Parker and stuff like that right now. And it's a real challenge, but I love it. I look forward to every morning after I drop off the kids at school, I come back and practice before I start teaching. So it's a really great thing for me.
Well, I certainly hear that vibe and that influence here. It is not quite just a extension of the McCartney thing going into various different genres, that it's a little more depth to the instrumentation or something like that. Wasn't really sure. Yeah, to what extent. I recall in the year 2000, I moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and I described trying to get new band players like, I really like Miles Davis. Can we do that except rock? Like, I don't want to solo all over the place. I just want that smoothness to the tone and that level of, we're not rocking at you. We're just presenting something that is clean and sweet.
Well, Miles is such a great example of what I love and always kind of strive for, which is to treat negative space equally with positive space. And, negative space is part of the music, and to leave some of that. It's not a lack of music when nothing is playing or where few things are playing. It's literally doing something, that space that you've carved out. And he's the best at that. When we first started this band, obviously you were asked for influences and things. And I would mention Leonard Cohen. I named the band after a Leonard Cohen album. But I would also mention Astor Piazzolla and Serge Gainsbourg and Thelonious Monk, because those were also influences. And it's not that we were going to sound like that, but that approach, that kind of seriousness that those players had, I think they all kind of were not going for like kind of an adolescent ideal. They were kind of grown ass men, as it were. And I think that was a big aspect of it that I was really interested in. Now that I'm, 51, I am grown. But, even at 30, I'd done enough of the rock and roll and jumping around and playing the, keyboard with my face and all the things. And I was really interested in just kind of like putting on a suit and playing like an adult, but just in a way that was compelling and had some room for interpretation and mystery and things like that.
Let's play the fade out, because of course the Disappear song has to fade out. 4:02 or so.
This is how to disappear.
I noted that there was more of that acoustic guitar monkeying around, but I wasn't really hearing it, just playing it on my phone in the air here. Certainly a lot of the vibes. So how many takes are you doing probably of this kind of thing? Is this like
2?
Once you have it worked out, you just get in and do it while it's fresh?
Yeah. 1 to 3. That's kind of how we work.
So if you've worked as a live band for the most part, you've got these things well rehearsed, then are you just getting at least all the basic tracks out in a couple of days for one of your albums typically, just so you can?
Yeah, I think for this new one, we did it pretty fast. I think in 3 days, we did all the basics for 13 songs. And then we came back and did overdubs for about 4 days, and that was it.
And are you self-recording anything, or you're just all doing it, I want to pay somebody and make it sound?
There's an engineer who we've collaborated with since the beginning. We've done stuff with other people. Our last one was with Mitch Easter producing, but a lot of the records with this guy, Tom Canova, who we worked with since on that record that we were just listening to, and, the second record and the fourth record. And we have a really good language musically to kind of work together, and we work really smoothly together with him. So we worked in a studio that he helps run in Durham. So we just wanted to go into, have it all set up. We do have recording situations at my house, and Mark has a proper studio also at his house, but we didn't want to deal with any of that. We just wanted to go in and be the band on this one.
Sure. I wasn't sure if like with overdubs, well, I want to be able to monkey around on this as long as it takes. I've just had projects where it takes just as long to lay down a freaking guitar part as it did to lay down the entire basic track of the song. And that just seems wrong.
It certainly can. I mean, that was an option we did discuss, but actually we decided we wanted to kind of keep it a little bit more coherent and do it all in the studio.
Well, let's get the third song out there, going back a little further in time to Our One Mistake, your second album with The Old Ceremony 2006. Reservations is the song you picked, connoting a certain, what style is this? Is this like I Put a Spell on You, it's a slow blues, Brecht viol?
Yeah, I mean, and it's got the kind of like Hendrix, John Lennon kind of thing where the vocal melody is doubled on the guitar in the hook. This one came out real fast, and this was a staple of our live set for a very long time.
So what do you remember, like, when this was, so this is, maybe you wrote 2003 or something, or 2000, when do you...
Well, it was on the second record, so it was probably wrote it around 2005. And that record came out in 2006. But we played it pretty much every show from then for about 10 years. And we stopped. And then recently we actually just did a 20th anniversary show and record release where we played a whole set of old stuff, resurrected a lot of old favorites, and brought in the cellist and the original piano player and all these different people who had been with the band. And yeah, so we resurrected that one as well. It was always a big one live because the guitar solo was always different. And so it was always kind of fun.
So this was not a sort of sloppy seconds record in terms of you've written so much before the first album comes out, and that then you do, okay, well, we'll release the 10, but then we have half an album still.
Oh, no, it wasn't. There was nothing left over. I think it's just all from that. I mean, the first 5 records were within 7 years. It was all really quick.
Sure.
And this record ended up, the second record is called Our One Mistake. That ended up being, to date, our most popular record. And, this is one of the songs that is one of our more popular songs.
All right, here is Reservations.
Do you have reservations? You know I do too. I just can't be sure anymore of counting on you. Do you have reservations? But you're not alone. I can tell that you do. It's sad, but it's true. Something is wrong. And I don't know what I'm gonna do when you finally come home. Do you have reservations? Have they been there a while? Do they swim in your head when you're lying in bed and you quietly smile? Do you have reservations when you hand me the keys? Wish they would go and leave us alone to do as we please. Do they take on a life of their own like some kind of disease? Reservations concerning our love. Do they whisper beware when I touch your hair and kiss you goodnight? Do they eat at your heart? Do they poison your wine? Do they cloud up your mind? Do they tear you apart? Well, I don't know what I'm gonna do the next time they start.
So this is the song that I was thinking that the bass part, when he's responding to your vocal lines, that the second one, even though you're playing a major chord, that he does a little minor thing in his, but then he does it major later in the song. Like, is that kind of thing always the same every time, or is it just?
He was a very playful player. He would always do it differently. So, sometimes he would wait a really long time and like, do you have reservation? Gap. Boo, 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 doo, ba, doo. Like he would just like really play with the time. So yeah, there was no telling really.
Yes. Well, I also thought of the I Want You, She's So Heavy, the Abbey Road tune, which has the bass that spins into the stratosphere on that song. I'm trying to remember, are there strings on this one too?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so it seems like you need two keyboards on this one, right? The piano is holding the main thing, but then you've got a lot of organ fluttering. Is that one guy with two hands?
Well, that was the 7-piece time. So we had a guy, James Wallace was our piano player from the beginning for the first 7 years. And so he was always playing piano, and Mark would play organ or vibraphone. So yeah, so we would have both of those. But, doing it now, Mark just plays an organ or a keyboard or something. It's all pretty loose in terms of what he plays, because whatever he plays is going to be good.
So given the eclectic style, I mean, were you pitching yourselves as some kind of old-timey music that you could have this, as opposed to straight rock and roll? Like, how did you market this when you got going? Was it the mini orchestra thing? Was that the shtick?
Yeah, I mean, if I were good at marketing, it was always difficult because it was hard to pigeonhole, but I mean, I think there was a vibe, there was a visual aspect of it that was always, we wore like suits and created a lot of atmosphere on stage with lighting and things like that. So we were going for a kind of a Leonard Cohen fronting the Bad Seeds, opening for Astor Piazzolla with Serge Gainsbourg. Like that's kind of where we were going for, something that was, not necessarily like super American sounding, not any particular style. I mean, there was jazz influence, there was rock influence. Over the years, we've incorporated a lot more kind of roots stuff, a la Too Big to Fail, or some of the more folky stuff, just because I write it. But yeah, I mean, I think the idea is that there's a certain sonic palette, and it's pretty broad. We're not particularly successful at marketing ourselves in any particular way.
I guess it's the Tom Waits thing, which maybe goes back to the Brecht Viol.
Definitely, yeah. Brecht Viol is a big one. Yeah, and Tom Waits, of course. Yeah, Randy Newman in certain ways as well.
Let me play the 50 seconds in with this guitar doubling your voice here.
Don't know what I'm gonna do when you finally come home.
With that's the string sting I had put, so you...
yeah.
And at this point, was it one guy just overdubbing himself a bunch for the strings?
We had two violinists at the time, Gabe Pelly, and then a guy named Daniel Hart, who is now a film composer. He did, I guess, the music for Green Knight and Ghost Story recently. He's done Pete's Dragon. He's done a lot of really great stuff. He's an incredible musician as well. So we had the two strings and the cello as well. So this was full-on string section times. But, this was kind of a lean and mean tune. It's not one of those painterly, expansive numbers. So we kept it pretty tight.
I guess when you have that kind of extended instrumentation, that's your genre, right? That if you're ELO, like ELO is mostly just a happy pop band, but because it has the strings there,
they're a Beatles pop band, yeah.
As opposed to Beatles, which are like, yes, we have strings, but they're hired guns. It's not
right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's. I think everybody is able to play more than one thing, which is good. So we can say, oh, and I think this is a vibes tune. I think this is a violin tune. I think this is a guitar or an organ tune or a synth or whatever. So that helps. We've learned over the last 20 years to do it with fewer people.
You're right. It doesn't pigeonhole you that much. That if you're one of those bands with the violin, like, or the tin whistle guy, the Pogues are going to be the Pogues. He's not going to switch and play keyboard on half the tunes. It's not just a gimmick that's brought out here and there.
I think there are a lot of bands that do what I'm describing too. I mean, like, Wilco in later incarnations definitely does that. Pat plays all kinds of instruments. A duo, now and then with this guy, Gary Loris, called Au Pair. And we opened for Wilco on a show where they were doing, it was all acoustic. And so it was, a melodica instead of a keyboard, a xylophone instead of a full-on organ, like all these things. And I think Nels Cline maybe played like a national guitar instead of an electric guitar. The point is, I think if you think the way you do in the studio live, where you're just looking for the right texture, within what you have lying around, I think you can do that without it becoming your whole identity sonically or personally.
Let me play in the middle of the second verse. I just like this piano line. I wanted to call attention to it.
When you hand me the keys.
Yeah, it starts in a staggered way. It's not just exactly in the same spot every time. This is another one. It's so, you've got so many possible instruments, but it seems like the tension is kept well controlled so that when the organ is freaking out, it doesn't just burst into what it could. That's
right. Yeah, James was great at coming up with parts like that. What I found early on is to encourage people to lay out. I would often lead by example, and lay out on guitar for whole sections of the song. I just wouldn't play, because if I was playing all the time and I was telling everybody to play less, it wouldn't have worked. So I would just be like, well, I'll start first. I won't play on almost any of this. And then, bring it in here and there. It was kind of trying to encourage everybody in such a large group without written arrangements to be responsible with their own personal parts within the arrangements, and to think as arrangers all individually rather than as just like, well, if I'm not playing, there's no music happening. So I think having everybody have the background that they do makes it easier for us to hear and make adjustments on the fly based on what's going on, because it's, jazz is an improvisational art.
And as you referred to about the song, the solo is sort of a centerpiece, about twice as long than one would expect, that it seems like it's wrapping up. Oh, no, actually, here's a better solo. Is this you playing this?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And you just reconstruct this every time, you said? Or
it's always different.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. I mean, when I hear a live show back, the only thing of mine that I ever want to hear is the solos, because those are always different. Everything else, I know what it sounds like. I mean, it may be a better or worse version of it, but I don't want to hear it. But the only thing I want to hear is the thing that I don't remember what it was. I think that's true probably for everybody when they're doing soloing. If they don't get in some sort of rut and playing the same thing all the time, I would always kind of push myself to try to surprise myself.
And then I think getting out of that, let me play just the tail end of that, a little before 3 minutes. So this is one that's been in the live set, or you just revived it for the Ancient Songs tour?
Yeah.
Well, was that revived more or less in its form, insofar as you could do it with the current group? It's not even the same people playing it. Or had it evolved constantly? Are there ones that are like, wow, this is unrecognizable from what it was 15 years ago?
You would recognize it, but it wasn't, we weren't like hitting every riff. It's just more like the way you would play the head of a song and then start deconstructing it or whatever. We would play it like that. The song structure is there, the words are there, the chord structure, but beyond that, it was much more open than that.
And how wild can this one get live? It seems like there's room.
Pretty wild.
Okay, you jump up to another octave, but it's still, I wrote cacophony at the end, but I think that was not because it was like an actual we're breaking the instruments. Let's hear the end.
We used to have quite a few songs that would end more or less with cacophony. It's always just kind of like barely controlled cacophony on some.
Next time that they start.
Yes, it all fits into that classic package that it's a little delivered to you. Like it's not it's not the Who. It's its own kind of more classical cacophony.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Can you say a little about how this fits? This is just one flavor in the overall that you're always looking for. I don't know. Do those flavors tend to come back? Like, oh, we've got that version of this song that kind of comes back in its 4 different versions, and you never want to put those all in the same live set or something like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there are a couple of those where it's like clearly this is going to replace this other thing. They're not quite that defined though. But I mean, I think they're what we refer to as the noir songs, and this is kind of on the edge of the noir plus the kind of rock thing. Whereas like the Disappear was more like of a purely kind of noir.
Sure.
And then there's the more like kind of power poppy type of thing, not, full on power pop. We're not wearing Chuck Taylors, but we are drawing on some of those things. And then there's the kind of folkier stuff. And, you can only do so much of that in a set also with a band. So yeah, I think there are different categories. They're not really strict, but they do exist.
Well, you had picked as a closing tune, we wanted to have another one from the new record, Hangman's Party, where you're doing your little high voice. It's a whole different kind of little tiptoeing kind of flavor. I really like the tune. Do you want to say a little about it before we hear it?
So this tune was one where I had written it without thinking about how it would work with the band. And once we started trying it with the band, the melody was way too low. It was just getting buried no matter what we did instrument wise. And so at some point, very soon before we recorded it, someone suggested, well, what if you try it high? And I thought that was ridiculous. And I tried it and it was ridiculous, but we liked it.
Sure.
And so that's how I do it now. And I really enjoy it. I mean, it's so different. I've never done a song purely in falsetto in my life. I've been doing it for 40 years almost. So it changed the way we played it, and it changed how the arrangement felt also to sing it like that rather than low.
Well, all right. Before we play that and say goodbye, anything else you want to? How far are you into writing the next batch of songs? I know you just released a Christmas song.
Yeah,
I'll link folks to that. We're not going to hear that.
Yeah, Arizona Christmas.
Yes. How does this? I mean, it seems like the solo career that was your thing before the Old Ceremony. Now it's just a thing that you put out random little instrumental or.
I put out 4 albums between the last 2 Old Ceremony records under my own name. So yeah, I mean, that's always kind of happening. And it's always songs that aren't going to work for the Old Ceremony. So I just do them myself. We have about 90 other songs that we haven't tried yet with the band. So there's that. I probably will write some new ones too, but I mean, they're still new to me. I hardly remember half of them. So I have to go and learn them myself before we try them. So yeah, I mean, I think we will start working on a new record sometime this next year and try to make it less than 9 years between records.
Is there going to be some release at some point with all the leftover pandemic stuff? Just you and your guitar or something just to get that out there?
I made a record of just piano songs from that called Lost World that came out last year. Yeah, I mean, these are all from that,
sure.
All these songs. I imagine a lot of my output, both with the Old Ceremony and solo, is going to be from this huge kind of pile of songs. We'll see.
You need not write ever again.
Oh, we'll never write again. We'll never be hungry again.
All right. Well, thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciated. Have a good long time to get familiar with not just listen through them once, but like repeatedly, because it deserves that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. Here it is. Hangman's Party.
Climbing every stair like a virgin on a volcano, pausing on the landing to breathe. When the invitation came, I could not say no. Now I'm making plans to leave discreetly unobserved, under countenance and rules absurd. Anecdote at the hangman's party, hangman's party, yeah. Freedom makes me feel just like a prisoner. That's why they say that nothing's free.
Thanks so much to Django. I really like that band, The Old Ceremony. Check them out at theoldceremony.com. And Django's solo albums, particularly the early ones before The Old Ceremony started, also have some very catchy stuff on them. You can find them on the streaming services. I will provide links to, as I always do, the band playing live, Django performing solo, Django performing with the Big Star touring group, whatever I can find on YouTube. So make sure you're looking at the blog post associated with this at nakedlyexaminedmusic.com. While you're there, I hope you will subscribe directly to the podcast if you're, for instance, hearing this through the Partially Examined Life feed. And while you're subscribing, please leave a nice rating and review on Apple Podcasts or whatever other platform. And if you want to get a completely ad-free experience, I'd like you to just support me at even the lowest level per month at patreon.com/nakedlyexaminedmusic. That'll get you not only that ad-free feed, which you can listen to on Spotify or Apple Music or any other podcast app you want, but it'll also get you a link to my notes, which lay out the lyrics, the structures of the songs, comments I had about the arrangements as I was prepping. And if you want to support me with a single click, probably, if you're using Apple Podcasts and don't care about the notes, you can just press that paid subscription button that's on Apple Podcasts if you're already listening to this directly on the Nakedly Examined Music feed, and that will graduate you to the paid level. And that membership will actually get you ad-free versions, not just of this podcast, but of my Philosophy versus Improv and pretty much pop podcasts as well. Hope you're doing well. Enjoying the new year. Keep on musicking. Until next time, this is Mark Linsenmeyer signing off.